Good evening. Welcome to the Square Discussion Table. I am your host, Elalu. Today we will be dissecting and discussing the pressing issues of the highly anticipated 1864 presidential election. As we all know, America is currently in the midst of the Civil War. So ever since last year, the Union has been successfully achieving military successes that will increase their chances of beating the Confederacy. Thus, the winner of the election will dictate whether or not a peace settlement will be produced or if the war will continue on. Another important factor of this election is the role and future of the Negroes. With the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln entirely changed the game. With so much help from black soldiers in the freeing of slaves in the rebellious states, abolition could or could not happen as a result of who triumphed in the election. In addition, Congress is currently politically divided between the Peace Democrats, the Copperheads, and the Republicans, which definitely affects the efficiency of our nation. Here with me today, I have Jane Weber, representing a Republican viewpoint. And on my right, I have Jem Lightwood, a Democrat. Now let's begin. Jane, how do you feel about the Emancipation Proclamation and its effects on the war and the potential freedom of the African Americans?
Just as the general public believes that the Emancipation Proclamation is not a good idea for the country as a whole, I feel the same. After we free the slaves, what are we to do with them? Now, I'm a moral and upright person, and I agree that slavery is bad. But I also believe that we are better off as a country with still having slavery intact. Freeing the slaves will be more of a burden to us than if we freed them. And in addition, the Emancipation Proclamation will make bringing an end to this war much harder than it already is. Although Lincoln is doing his best to save the Union, I don't think this will help much.
Thank you, Jane. Now, Jem, what is your viewpoint on this?
I believe that the Emancipation Proclamation was not a smart move on Lincoln's part, as it further angered the Confederate States and fueled the war. It's part of the reason why the war has yet to end. While ending slavery is the moral thing to do, we cannot afford to end it right now. In order to protect the Union and end this war, the Negroes are going to have to wait for their freedom.
Thank you so much, Jem. Now, Jane, do you believe the Confederate States had a right to secede?
Of course not. Even though our founding fathers gave the states the power to do things in the interest of their citizens, it was not intended for the states to use that power to secede on any whim that they had. Instead of deciding to secede, the states should have been more willing to negotiate and compromise with Lincoln and the rest of the Republican Party to keep slavery in their states and possibly even add more slave states to the West.
So you feel like as though if they had compromised, then this whole war could have been entirely avoided, which I totally understand because, compromise, you have to compromise if you want to run an efficient government. Okay, what's your take on it, Jem?
I agree with Jane in that Confederate States did not have the right to secede as that violates the Constitution and hurts the Union. Secession was not a solution and they should not have done that.
Great point, Jem. Okay, now let's talk about government, guys. Jane, whose system of government do you think is more fit for America? The Unions or the Confederacies?
The Union form of government is a far better fit for our country. Having a strong centralized government is important to the country's prosperity and success. If we follow the Confederate form of government, having our government based on the Articles of Confederation, we would not be able to properly run this country.
Alright, I can really see your point there. How about you, Jem?
While we must protect the Union and follow the Constitution, peace at any cost requires compromise. We should follow the structure of government provided by the Constitution, but give states more rights, such as the right to keep slavery or not to keep it.
Well, I can see from all your responses that you're quite conciliatory to the South, but I can see where that can prevent wars such as the Civil War. Okay, so there are a lot of atrocities committed throughout this war. But some of the most significant ones were created by our own president, President Lincoln. Jane, do you feel like some of his actions went too far?
As the Commander-in-Chief, Lincoln has the power to do what he believes is right for the country, especially during this difficult time of war. By suspending the writ of habeas corpus, Lincoln is ensuring our country's security and union. If this were the case during peace times, I would feel that he is overstepping his power as a president by using an unconstitutional excessive power. But we are not in peace times, so he is justified in his actions.
Thanks, Jane. Jem, would you like to respond?
The suspension of the writ of habeas corpus was an unjustified action. Even as the President of the United States, Lincoln did not possess the right to violate the people's natural liberties. It is against the Constitution and further damages the Union by giving the impression that the central government can violate the rights of people whenever they want.
So what you're saying is I can basically see like this is why like people would be scared to like go back to the Union because okay, the central government is doing this much, like we want to keep ourselves independent and sovereign, so I can see why people might this might have like kind of tick people off and like just be like, no, I don't want to go back to the Union. Let's see what the public thought. Here are some earlier recordings I took to see what they felt was the best candidate for this election. Here's an exclusive clip to see what the public thinks. Hello, what is your name?
Mrs. Heartcake.
Oh, Mrs. Heartcake. Who do you think is going to win the 1864 presidential election?
Lincoln, of course.
Why do you think Lincoln?
I believe slavery should be abolished everywhere in America, and I have faith Lincoln will guide this nation to that path. As a Quaker, I strongly advocate for equality for all, and I feel as though slavery is a cruel injustice for mankind. Also, I want this war to end in victory for the Union. My husband and kids do not want any peace between the traitors you call the Confederates. Lincoln is pro-Union, and I am pro-Lincoln.
And there you have it, folks. Thank you, Mrs. Heartcake.
Hi, here we have James Cornfield, and we're going to ask him a couple of questions about the election. So, Mr. Cornfield, who are you supporting in this upcoming election?
Well, I recollect that I'm going to be supporting George B. McClellan. You know George B. McClellan? I'm supporting him because I don't want to see this war go on any longer. I'm tired of this. Also, if Lincoln becomes president, all of my labor will be lost, down the drain. Let's keep America pure and white. That's what I think. That's what you heard me right. Pure and white. McClellan was also the leader of Lincoln's very own Union Army. His experience with leading others would be great, as he would be a great leader for this country. I'm sick of Lincoln using the government as his pawn. So again I say, without any recollection that, without any doubt, that McClellan is the one that will restore prosperity and reestablish the Union as a great country.
All right, so there we have it. Thank you, Mr. Cornfield. Back to you, Ella.
I had a lot of fun today discussing the 1864 election with Jane and Jem. Now, thank you so much for being here and just really giving us insight into the depth and complexity of this election and the impacts it will have on our nation. Thanks for joining us.